You're listening to Titular Characters with your host, the adorable Eva Webb.
Let's talk nerdy things like comic books and superheroes with some nerdy peeps, writers, cartoonists, and so much more. Some fun with the lovely and adorable Eva Webb.
Hello, my babies. In this episode, we're featuring Dave Dellecese. Dave is a writer and author of comics, children's books, graphic novels, and so much more. He is also the co-creator and writer of middle schooler turned superhero graphic novel Lacey and Lilly from Darby Pop Publishing. His comic credits include writing and occasionally doodling the comic series Holidaze, the adult comedy series about the after-hours lives of mythical icons. Dave has contributed to the pages of Puddle Press's comedy series The Devil and Mr Gandhi. Outside comics, his most recent work is Frank the Barber, a historical fiction tale set on Christmas Eve 1943 in the city of Utica, New York. Dave also lends his voice to the Brass Lantern old-time radio adventure podcast, playing former reporter turned private investigator Wham Dixon. But the best part, I think, is that he's here today, and he's ready to talk about all of it. How are you, Dave?
I am good. I am very good. How are you?
I'm really well. So a little birdie tells me that you're working on something interesting. You want to talk about your latest project?
Yes. Well, I just collaborated with a wonderful artist named Andrew Zielinski on a all-ages graphic novel called Lacey and Lilly, which was released by Darby Pop Publishing over the summer. And it's something we'd worked on for a few years together. And it's really fun. It's really exciting. It's, like I said, it's all ages. And it's something that for me kind of has that sort of same feeling of when you're, 8 to 12 years old reading comics again. It's about a girl and her dog who find a pair of super suits and put them on and find that they have superpowers. And so naturally, what does one do when one is faced with this situation but become a middle school superhero? And I'm just really, really excited and pleased as punch that Darby Pop liked it enough to pick it up and run with it. And we're currently actually working on a volume 2 follow-up to it as well. So it's a really exciting, fun time. I probably used exciting like 5 times in the past 60 seconds.
Oh, no, you're totally okay. One thing I loved about this book is I just love the tone of it. I like the pace, just sort of how it moves from thing to thing. And I only read the digital version, so I don't have my hands on a physical copy, but it's a very thick comic. There's a lot there.
Thank you. Yeah, it was, I think that it kind of evolved as it went along. Originally, I actually think originally we thought we could tell the story we had to tell in 3 issues. And then that, as we went along, quickly became 4. And then Andrew wisely had decided, he came and said to me and said, this is going to be 5. It just really needs to be 5 for me to illustrate this properly. And he was absolutely right. And so it became this 5 issue or 5 chapter story that we were doing and working on our own. And by the time that Darby Pop had caught wind of it, when we were running a Kickstarter for it, and one of their editors, the wonderful Renee Gerlings, reached out to us about it. And asked if we wanted to join them. at that point, the book was pretty much done, but it was this, I don't want to say massive tome, but by what we had originally started it out to be, became much larger than it was going to. But that's okay. I'd rather we took the time and told the story that we wanted to. And hopefully from your comments, which I appreciate, it didn't, the fact that it was 5 chapters long, that didn't drag in those 5 chapters. So I appreciate that very much.
No, I don't feel like it dragged. I feel like it's paced extremely well. It's one of those books that you start reading on the first page, and the next thing you know, it's over, and you're like, oh my god, I just want more.
Well, thank you. It's a true collaborative effort. I attribute a lot of that to just the way that I think Andrew and I really blend really well together in our process. The secret origin of how Lacey and Lily came to be about was that we had been friends and we were working on something else together, and we were having coffee one morning, and he pulled out this little napkin, and he had doodled a girl with her hair over one of her eyes, and then a picture and her dog. And he just said, I want to do something for kids. I want to draw something for kids. I think we should do a book about, a girl and her dog and their superheroes. And I got a name. We should call it Lacey and Lily. And I was like, okay, I like it so far. And he was like, that's what I got. See what you can do with it. And so it was sort of like this fun puzzle, because I had these starting pieces, and he kind of came to me with, and from there I just got to really like get to work, kind of building upon that core idea and building the world out. And then, obviously, it's a collaborative effort. So as we went along, I would bounce things off each other. But at its core, it's a story about a middle school girl, not the brains of her class, not the class clown, not the most popular, just very, middle of the road, which I think a lot of us can relate to at that stage of life, where it's easy to blend into a crowd if you let yourself. And, her grandmother has passed, and while cleaning out grandma's house, they find this pair of costumes in this old trunk, and she, goofing around, she puts them on her and her dog, and suddenly the costumes activate and give them superpowers, and our story, kind of takes off from there, and goes into all these different, for me, levels of both, wish fulfillment during that middle school era of what it would be like to have all of these power and ability, and at the same time, it's also turns into a story about generations and legacy and friendship and what it means to really be a hero, and whether or not that is something that you need the superpowers for, or whether or not that is something that can be found in anybody from within. And to me, that was a lot of fun to do. And now that I'm, I can't even remember at what point we had started this, but now I now have 3 children. I can't remember how many I had. It's been so long since we started Lacey and Lily, the early stages of the process. It's been years. But it's something that now I can very proudly put in the hands of my kids without any regrets or reservations for them to read. And that's really darn cool.
Where do good collaborations come from? What's involved, and what's the genesis of the building blocks of building an effective relationship with an artist?
I think that one of the biggest and probably the most crucial parts of collaboration is the notion and the understanding that despite what we may think in moments, that no one of us is a genius, and we need to be open to ideas outside of our own brain and outside of our own ego. I think that once you can allow yourself to create something, put it in the hands of somebody else, and ask for feedback, ask for true feedback, and see from their point of view, in this case, an artist's point of view, what works for them and what doesn't. Then you've started the process of collaboration. There's, if I had tried to do this when I was in my early to mid 20s, let's say, like, I know looking back, I'm 41 now. If when I look back at that time of my life, I never could do something that I could be as proud of it as I am with this, because I don't think I was as open to collaboration as I am now, and that was just a growth issue. Collaboration to me really is when you can really open yourselves up to somebody else's talents and perspective, and see what they can offer. And I think that younger me of 20 years ago might have, maybe it would have been ego looking back at early 20 something me, but like probably would not have been as flexible. And I think that would have killed collaboration at the outset. I think that in order to collaborate, one has to be able to understand or accept, let me say accept when something they've made doesn't work, when something they've made isn't hitting the mark. And sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow. But if you can do that, then I think you've really opened up the door to collaboration, because you're writing a story and then you're putting in somebody else's hands, an artist's hands, in order to make it live. And I think that the artist is going to have their own thoughts on what's really going to work and what's going to help bring it to life. And I think that when you can bounce things off each other, it only gets better. I really think it only gets better. There's going to be times where both of you may really insist, like, no, it's got to be this, it's got to be this. And when you can make your case for it and you can make it well, then you've got an argument for it, and maybe there's a reason why it needs to stay that way. But really, I think working together and being able to accept each other's foibles and just those different perspectives. I feel awful because I feel like I've really gone really long-winded on you for what I probably should have boiled down to a very simple answer, which is, the key to collaboration is accepting your own faults and being able to openly accept criticism that some things may not work, so that you can go back and make them better.
Dave.
I probably could have saved us a whole 5 minutes with that one.
Okay, so you've listened to this show before, so you know what I'm going to say, here and now. Never apologize for long-winded answers. This show is about long-winded answers. So the more long-winded you are, the better it is. I feel like, well, for one thing, it gives me more to edit, and for another, sometimes insight doesn't fit into easy little sound bites. So
sound bites.
Don't even feel bad about it. So, where do you find your creative zen?
Gosh, it's funny because I think that sometimes I really do think that there are moments that we have, all of us have, where things just sort of click. And I have a lot of reservation about saying that, because you hear so many times the advice, from many a professional writer, many a successful professional writers is, you can't wait for inspiration. You just have to sit down and write. But that aside, I think that all of us have all experience in some form, whether it's, writing or, maybe you're an engineer trying to solve a problem, or, or something else entirely. We've all had those moments where you have struggled and you have tried to figure things out. And all of a sudden, in a moment that you least expected, it comes flooding at you like the a reservoir gates have opened, and all of a sudden it's washing over you, and it's all making sense, and the entire story is there, and you suddenly figure it out. And I don't think that there's any great recipe for those moments, but I think that in terms of Zen, personally, I like to be outside. I really, I'm not going to say that that's where all those inspirational moments come, but for me, anytime I have the opportunity to be outside, I love it. I love just sitting outside, and whether it's, on the sidewalk of a coffee shop, watching people go by, and cars moving by, maybe not so much during COVID time, but pre-COVID, or even, this past year, I've found so many wonderful, Zen moments, as you referred to them as, just kind of sitting on my front porch or sitting in my backyard and listening to the birds and the quiet. And it's just sort of it puts my mind at ease. And I think that that's when it's a lot easier to kind of formulate my thoughts a little better.
So you may have actually just answered this, but what kind of writer are you? Are you the type of writer that sits down and plans every aspect of your story ahead of time, or do you just come up with an idea and sort of let it grow?
I think a little bit of both. I think that there are times when there are times where I have to just let some things grow. I have to try and find the right angle to hit it from, and sometimes that can be a more arduous process than I would like. There are other times where I do just sit down. One of the great things about collaborating with Andrew is that not every story, but a lot of the times what will happen is, and I'm speaking in hypotheticals, but he'll have in his head things that he really wants to draw. For example, actually now I'm not speaking hypotheticals anymore. In volume 2 of Lacey and Lily, we had had a set of stories that were already written, and this past year he had came to me and said, I really want to draw something that takes place in the fall around Halloween with some floating pumpkins, and I wanted to have X, Y, and Z, and see what you can do with it. And so it's sort of that's where it's the more I can't say structured, but it's like putting a puzzle together. Because then I'll sit there and I'll have all these little elements that I know he really wants to draw. And I'll think to myself, all right, how can I tell a story that I really like using those elements? And it's sort of like having these scattered pieces of a puzzle. And my brain has to figure out, how in the world do I take all of these different things and make them work in a cohesive way for a story? I mean, elements are one thing, but to make it all kind of come together is another. And we do that quite a bit. Another story from volume 2, came about because he had told me he had taken a trip to Salem at the time, and said, I really want to draw a story that takes place in Salem, and I wanted to have a werewolf in it, and it should be like a field trip and Halloween time. And so I had, I was, the request was, and I wanted to be like a Scooby-Doo episode. And so it's like this puzzle, like, okay, Scooby-Doo episode, Salem, Massachusetts, werewolf. Okay. So I'm like taking these pieces and I'm figuring, all right, how do I make a story for this already established, superhero middle school universe that we have, and make that all. Okay, Salem. All right, we're gonna have a field trip. Okay, there's one puzzle piece. I've got a field trip. Okay, a werewolf. Okay, I don't know where the werewolf's coming in yet. Okay, but a Scooby-Doo cartoon. Okay, what if it's not on? Okay, is it a real werewolf or is it not? We got a mystery on our hands, gang. And so little by little, those pieces come together and the story starts to form. So in that way, I do find myself literally the sit down and do it because I'm putting the puzzle together. I have the elements that my collaborator, that the artist really wants to draw. And if he's passionate about drawing these certain elements, then I really want to write something that incorporates all those things because I want him to be excited about the story that he's drawing. And there's other days where it's just those little moments of inspiration, and whether that's whether it's a comic piece or whether it's a prose piece that I'm working on, and those moments sometimes come all at once, and then there's other times where those moments come, and I'm going to be honest, a bunch of things get scribbled down on a notepad, like the manifesto of a crazy person, and then get shoved away in a desk until I can somehow either make sense of it or have that great moment of the train of ideas coming at me again. So it's not a definitive answer, but really I think that for me, it's having my feet in both worlds.
So one thing that strikes me about this project in particular is how the world feels older and more lived in than say something that was just thought of. How do you accomplish that as a writer? Is there a trick to it?
That's a really good question. I don't know if there's really a trick to it. I'm a big fan of things happening off panel and off page, just like whether it's the comics or even in TV and movies. I love things that happened outside of the screen that we don't see, because I'm gonna think, and I'm gonna mention something here that right in modern day is a bad example, which is Star Wars. And now we have so many books and comics and graphic novels and TV series and animated series that kind of fill the gaps of the various time periods in Star Wars. But when you think back to I think back to like childhood, and before a lot of those things existed. And even before my time, I was born in 1980, so Star Wars had already come out at that point. But thinking back to after that first Star Wars movie came out, before my time, think about what all those those audience members who were watching that, they all went home, especially if they loved it. They all went home and in their brains had their own ideas of what had happened before that movie, what happened after that movie. I'm talking about a New Hope, of course. They had in their heads their own ideas of who Anakin Skywalker was and what was that all about, and they were creating these adventures in their heads. The universe was being built in everybody's individual imagination. And I like when writing, the reason I mention that is because I really like when writing, and I've had to employ it a lot with Lacey and Lily, is to leave a lot of things that just sort of exist and not even necessarily address them. Were there heroes, a generation or two before? There were. Are we going to tell you all the details so that you have everything you need to know about them? Absolutely not. A, because it may not be necessary, but B, it's so much more fun to let the reader's imagination sort of take off with what they think happened. At least in my opinion, I am fascinated by the concept of that. Anytime you can leave pieces that don't distract from your story, it's just an interesting element of the world that you're writing in. Let the reader go and let their imagination take it and run with it. If you go back and you revisit at some point, great. But if you just have things that have, as you're writing, that just exist, they're just there. Everything does not need to be explained all the time. And I think that sometimes it's very easy for us, by us, I mean any writer or in any format, to get caught up in wanting to set up everything and having to explain everything. Maybe that's just a bad side effect of storytelling, is we want to tell you the entire story, and it's not necessary. But if you can just up your characters into a world that already exists, and know that there are elements of that world that are there, and there's probably some really cool information or backstory there, but you don't have to cover every single, granular element of it. I think that what you do is you have a much better chance of creating, as you said, a world that's lived in, a world that's been there. For a guy who over explains and talks as much as I do when it comes to storytelling, I feel like sometimes the best things are the things that are left unsaid, that are left off panel, off screen, and just letting your imagination run with it yourself, or with the reader's imagination, I mean, and let them fill in all that backstory. All they need to know is that it's there. And I think that helps what you're talking about, because not all of us are going, despite the sidewalks that we may walk down every day, we're not doing intense history lessons of every building on that sidewalk, or every person who we come across. They're passing fleeting moments. If something catches our attention, maybe we go do a little research on the internet to find out the history of that building, or find out more about this person that we saw somewhere, in a story or in a news article, or et cetera, et cetera. But in real life, we don't go having the entire world set up for us and intricately explained. So we don't really need it in our stories either.
Interesting. So how much thought do you put into this stuff when you're world building?
Gosh. I think that for me, it really comes out of what's necessary and what's not. Like I said, you can get lost if you keep going down to like the granular level of every conceivable character and every conceivable backstory and every conceivable setting, or you can set it up, tell what you need to tell the interesting parts, and let it fly. And so for me, some of it comes out of what's necessary for that story. If in my head I have a really great story that maybe I want to get to down the line, I'll leave that open. But like I say, I'm just not a huge fan of telling everything all up front. And maybe that's, maybe that makes me a hack by some standards. But I just really think that if we're telling stories that are trying to reel in people's imagination, we have to give their imagination some leeway to run on their own. And for that, I tend to personally write for that particular story. Or at least the story that I've planned. I'll use Lacey and Lilly as an example. Writing Lacey and Lilly, I'm writing for those, that first volume, those 5 issues. And if I get the chance to tell more stories, which, luckily I'm going to get to do, that's great. I can build upon some stuff that we did before. But the entire time, I really try to just do what we needed to tell that story right. And that came up in some discussions over coffee sometimes as we were moving along the process, with Andrew and I, because he would say, oh, well, don't we need to tell the story of Lily? We should, the dog, Lily, we got to get into her origin. We got to talk about where she came from. And I was like, well, I'll hint at it. And, he was very trusting because about that, because I think he wanted to go more deep. And I said, well, we'll do that story down the line. And it was because, the story was more about Lacey and her journey as a kid and a hero. And the other stuff really wasn't necessary to what we were trying to tell. And luckily he went with it and we did it. And I'm really happy with the way it was set up. And we're going to dive into some of that other stuff in volume 2.
Nice. So, how do you engineer conflict?
Oh gosh, there's. I think it depends on the story. I think sometimes it comes from an emotional place, and from there, the if there is a physical conflict to mirror or spring out of the emotional conflict, it sort of all builds off of that. The emotional conflicts, how that needs to be dealt with, what kind of you know resolution we can find to those feelings, and how that can be kind of manifested in a physical story. Um, at least in terms of something like a Lacey and Lily, like a superhero story. Um, and obviously that plays out a little bit differently um, across different mediums. I did a children's book called The Little Lamp, which was about it was a children's picture book, and it was about a lamp that gets tossed to the curb after being around for a couple of years, and thinks that it's purpose, that he's lost all purpose, that he has no reason to light up anymore. He's been tossed to the curb in the trash. He thinks everything's come to an end, and he gets picked up by a woman who realizes she can repurpose him. She brings him home, cleans him up, gives him a good home again, and he finds that he has this new purpose. And a conflict like that is very much born out of the emotion of the story. I was trying to tell a story about upheaval in life and how we can completely doubt ourselves and our entire reason for being when we have enough of upheaval in our life. And that is represented in the story by this lamp who's had a very wonderful life lighting for this family for many years, and then gets tossed to the curb. That's like the ultimate upheaval that you could find for an anthropomorphic appliance, thrown out in the trash. And so he just questions his entire reason for being. What is my purpose if I'm not shining for this family anymore? But discovers that despite the upheaval that he has gone through, and he finds this new home and this new person and this new purpose, that he finds that he still has a purpose. And that story, the physical elements of the story were born out of wanting to really touch upon the message that no matter what kind of upheaval you go through, you still have a reason for being here. You still have a purpose. Because I just feel that there's so much pain out in the world at any age, that there is so many times that we question our reasoning for being here. And I think we do that on normal days, but like on the days when everything is going wrong, when we're having periods of life that just plain suck, and everything seems to be terrible, and our entire world has been turned upside down. Those are the times when it's the hardest. Those are the times when it's the hardest to understand, our reason. It's when we have the most self-doubt. And I just wanted to do the story, especially for kids, that lets them know and reassures them that, like, no matter what happens, you are important. You have a purpose for being here. And I know I kind of went on a bit of a rant there, but that is conflict that was born out of an emotion that I wanted to address. So I think that a lot of the times the best conflict comes out of or reflects some type of a emotional conflict that's going on with the characters.
Nice. Is there a particular emotional place you like to write from, or does it vary?
These days, I think that a lot of the emotion that I like to write from is, and this may sound really cliche or cheesy, but is one of like love and hope. When I was younger, I wrote a lot of stories that I think were what I thought at the time. Again, I'm talking like 20 years ago or more. Were things that I wrote then. I look back and I when I come across stuff that I'd written, was either, either incredibly cynical or hopeless. And I think it just really, I can look at things that I wrote and say, like, oh gosh, yes, that was written by 24-year-old Dave, or oh yes, that was written by 17-year-old Dave. When I come across old works or old notebooks or something like that, I can definitely to pinpoint what point in my life that I had written something. These days, I really like to write from an emotion of love and hope. And fun. I want things that I write to, I don't want to say have a sense of whimsy, but to not be a total downer. I want things that kind of may have characters that have to struggle and really go through a lot of problems, or a lot of trouble, or a lot of upheaval. And that's okay. A character can go through hell. In fact, it's usually better when a character, has to go through hell of some sort, as long as there is hope that remains there. If there is light at the end of the tunnel, that is where I write from today. I want to know that there is hope to be found. I want to know that there is the possibility that things are going to be better. And I don't think that the me of 20 years ago really knew that, but that's definitely now in the stage of life that I'm in now. That's definitely I think where I write from.
Yeah, hope is just so important. Hope, love, positivity. People get sort of distracted.
I think we need more of it.
Yeah, they get distracted.
It's easy to get
they
distracted
fall
these days.
down these rabbit holes of hate, and sometimes,
Yeah.
and I know it sounds stupid, and I know it sounds cheesy, and people who feel cynical about this sort of roll their eyes when I say these things, but sometimes you just gotta give the world a hug. It matters. Somebody's going to appreciate that.
I agree, and I think that unfortunately it feels like every passing month, year, you can find more and more reason to just want to curl and get angry, or curl up and just want to give up. And I feel like you can't. We need to be reminded, in the media that we consume, whether that's comics or TV or film or prose, books or poetry or anything. It's we need to be reminded that A, we're not alone, and that B, things can be better. There is hope, there can be happiness, there can be love, and those things are attainable goals.
So you've written a few things now. How do you keep your stories fresh and interesting?
Oh gosh. I think that anytime I try to take on a project, I try to make it something that I haven't personally done before. With comics, the first comic I did, actually Andrew and I had collaborated on before, Lacey and Lilly, was a series called Holidaze, and it was about the bar where it was a comedy for adults, and it was the bar where like Santa and the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny and St. Patty and Cupid and everybody go after they're done with work, and they like clock off, and they clock, they're off the clock, and they have drinks, and they commiserate, and they get into like trouble. And it was a very that started out actually, as a side note, it's funny, like that started out as more of a I think like a transitional period of writing, because originally it was written almost as sort of like a one-off concept of like, oh, it's these holiday icons and they're being like really like bad, bad and naughty and extreme. And we had done that for like a story or two, and kind of realized like, A, this isn't really sustainable, and B, it's not really a lot of fun. And so we kind of shifted gears by like issue 2 or 3 and started trying to kind of remove the more extreme elements and kind of make it more of like almost sitcom-y, and kind of equating it to sort of a Cheers blended with Animal House kind of humor. But it was definitely aimed at adults. And we had done about 9 or 10 stories, I think, that we'd collected into 2 graphic novels. And so when it came time when we decided we wanted to do something else, I think Andrew and I were both decided like we wanted to do something different. We didn't want to do like the adult comedy thing again. We wanted to do something that was more universally accessible. And so we decided we wanted to do something all ages. We wanted to do something, kids could pick up, and that, was totally different from what we had done before. The Little Lamp was a picture book that I had done, and that was completely different from what I had done before. I had never done a picture book before. I spent some time working with a mentor figure, J.M. DeMatteis, who worked on Justice League International for many years. Craven's Last Hunt for Spider-Man. Wonderful, amazing writer, fantastic guy, and he
He's a legend.
helped me. Yes, and he is an amazing person, and he worked with me to kind of work the kinks out of my early drafts for The Little Lamp, and to really get it to a publishable point. And I'm forever grateful to him for his wisdom, because it certainly elevated what I was working on. And it was very inspiring, because after doing that and to be able to hold the book in my hands now, it's just, it sort of makes everything like this new adventure, because I kind of feel like I found new, I hate to use the term broken new ground, but I mean personally broken new ground. It was new for me, and that's very exciting. And so I think for me, every time I approach something, I want it to be something I haven't done before, whether it's format or the medium or just, a different story. I'll go back to Lacey and Lilly, because I love talking about Lacey and Lilly, and it's a project that we're continuing and still working on. There were some stories that I had done for volume 2 that, I passed on to Andrew, and he came back and said, this, like the Mean Girls bully thing, we've kind of already done that. We don't really want to keep doing that. And he was absolutely right that and I had scrapped a story or 2 because they were kind of retreading old ground. And I probably should have known better, but I didn't. But I needed that, to go back to an earlier topic. I needed that collaborator to, who I was working with, to look at it and go, we already did this. Why would we do this again? And it was true. I wasn't saying anything new. I wasn't, it was just it was actually becoming a bit of a crutch. So I just scrapped the script completely and wrote a completely different story that I was 10 times as happy with and proud of. So I think that the key is to find things that A, you're excited about, B, that maybe you haven't done before, and see that might be a challenge for yourself. I mean, writing volume 1 of Lacey and Lily was great and exciting and really a lot of fun. So with volume 2, it was what can I do? What can we do that is different than what we did before? And I do think that we're doing that. We built the sandbox in volume 1, and then volume 2 is us getting to play in the sandbox with these characters.
So, are you still an active fan? Are you still reading comics by other people?
I am. I definitely don't read, admittedly, as much as I used to. A lot of my, I mean, believe me, I look back to those ages of like eight to 12 when I would sit by my window in my room with no responsibilities in the world, spending paper route money on comic books, and just spending all this time reading. Um, and right now, I like I said, I mentioned earlier, I have three kids. They're all young, elementary school aged. There's a lot of time involved there. Um, so a lot of my reading time is usually at the end of the night, usually, um, you know, before going to sleep, or if I'm up in the middle of the night and I can't sleep, I tend to read. And my reading is usually made up of one of two things. It's either biographies of old Hollywood, or it's comics. That's usually what's sitting on my shelf. But I do still pick up some books. I still read a lot of old books. I have a lot of uh, collections on my bookshelf of things of years past. Golden Age stuff, Silver Age stuff, Bronze Age stuff that I absolutely love. But I do pick up new stuff as well. I just don't pick up as much of it as I used to years ago.
Do you have a favorite single issue story or title of all time?
Of all time, ooh, of all time is hard. I can think of I can think of some. The one I'm about to name may not be my all time, but I would say it's one of my all time. It is. It is. I think it's from Batman 30 back in like 1945, if my memory serves correctly. Now,
Wow, that's an old one.
It's I want to say it's like 40. Yeah, I think it's like 45. And I don't even think it's the main story in the book. The cover is one of those very stereotypical World War II covers where like Batman is like handing a rifle to a soldier and like talking about like war loans. But the story that I love is actually I think the backup story. It's like the second or third story, and it's called While the City Sleeps. I think Dick Sprang illustrated it. I could be wrong. I'm trying to remember from memory here, but the story is about Batman and Robin going through the city at night and engaging with the people who work the night shift in Gotham City. So it's literally starts out with like Bruce tossing the costume to Dick and like telling him like we're gonna meet. Basically, I don't remember the words, but it's essentially like you're gonna see all the people who make this city go work at night, and they go around and they whether it's the people, the janitorial staff who are cleaning office buildings, or whether it's the person working the radio station late at night, or the person at that time, it was 1945, delivering milk or getting newspapers ready. And of course, they stumble upon a crime that the night people working the night shift to help them solve. But I read that story, a reprint of that story, when I was either a preteen or early teens or something like that, in a collection that I found at a store called Greatest Golden Age Stories Ever Told. And I was fascinated by it for reasons I can't even explain, but it still remains, like I said, I don't think I could pick my utmost favorite story, but that one always pops up when I have to think of some of my favorite stories, because I just absolutely love this concept. Because I think, with Batman especially, I think, first of all, I think most of the time a lot of folks get caught up in like the villain of the piece, whether it's a Joker story or a Riddler story or a Penguin story, or some crucial moment in Batman's life. For me, it's just, there is something so charming about the idea of Bruce Wayne just deciding one night, come on, Dick, I'm gonna introduce you to everybody who works tonight, so you have a better understanding, old chum, of what it takes to make this city move day in and day out. And I just think that that's a really fun way to start a story. And naturally, yeah, they run into some criminals along the way, but it's just a really, I don't know, neat. I can't really explain it, and probably I'm sure people will think that I'm absolutely insane for picking that as a favorite Batman story, but it truly, truly is.
So, in your opinion, who is the most underrated or inspiring creator in comics?
There's a couple. I don't think I could pick one. I'll try to be brief, which I know is hard for me to do.
I'll take both of them if you got them.
Okay. I think that, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his name right, Charlie Fish, I think, is one of the most underrated writers in comics. And I don't think enough people really appreciate how much he has done for I'm talking modern day comics. Charlie Fish has writes a lot of the all ages books that you'll see from like Scooby-Doo or the Batman Brave and the Bold tie-in when that was on the air. Scooby-Doo Team Up is one my son loved. And I think he did Marvel superhero adventures too. And these are all one and done stories, incredibly well done stories that just truly encapsulate the characters and the worlds in each issue. If you pick up any issue of, if you find in a back issue bin, any issue of the Batman Brave and the Bold from the cartoon series, that Charlie Fish wrote them. And again, I hope I am pronouncing the name right. And they are absolutely perfect. They, every issue is this incredibly well done story, and it's told in like 20 pages or 22 pages, and yet perfectly encapsulates the personalities of whether it's Batman and Wonder Woman or Aquaman, and whatever villain is featured in that piece. And the same exact thing for when he was writing Scooby-Doo Team Up. And if for those unfamiliar with Scooby-Doo Team Up, it ran for 50 issues, or at least 50 print issues. And every issue was Scooby and the Mystery Inc. gang teaming up with either characters from the DC universe or like the Hanna-Barbera universe. So like one issue, you may get Scooby-Doo, Mystery Inc. and Batman and Robin. And the next issue might get Mystery Inc. and the Flintstones. And another one you might get Mystery Inc. and Plastic Man. But like every issue was a home run. And I was constantly amazed every time. And my son would get them and he would read them. And then I would read them when he was done with them. And I could not get over how good they were. They were timeless representations of these characters that either everybody knew, or if you were a comic fan, you knew, and you could read these and I was blown away by everyone. So I think one of the vastly underrated writers of modern day comics. I am also, I mentioned J.M. DeMatteis, amazing legend, absolute legend. Love everything he does. And then the third one I'm going to mention is someone we were talking about and how incredibly kind he is, but also what a brilliant writer he is Tom Peyer and what he's doing with Ahoy Comics. Tom's written, pretty much every comic character that you know of, in his career. And now, he's editor-in-chief and writing books for Ahoy. And the stuff they're doing there is just out of this world good. Wrong Earth, which is essentially, if you were to take the Ben Affleck Batman and the Adam West Batman, only here it's Dragonfly and Dragonfly Man, and put them face to face with each other or swap their worlds. It's these brilliant takes on tropes and characters that we all know, and they've got. I mean, he's got an amazing team of other writers, there as well, doing just incredible stuff. They have not put out a bad book yet, and I just. I'm constantly amazed at the quality of every single book, both that Tom touches, but that Ahoy puts out, and the people on that team do.
Yeah, Tom is amazing, and the Ahoy books are really just some of the best comics that have come out at all. I think. I think it's fair to say that Wrong Earth is one of my favorite superhero stories of all time. And it's weird because, like we were talking about earlier with the world building, um, that one's definitely a universe that is really robust, and it feels like it's been there. And you read this
Yeah,
book and it plays with your mind, and so you're reading the book and you're thinking, "Oh man, I loved this when I was a kid. I love it now. I've always loved this book, but it's only been around for a year or two."
yeah, and it's just taking on new dimensions of things that we are familiar with. You can see the shades of like Adam West Batman in there, and the elements from that show. And so there's sort of this familiarity there. But at the same time, he's taking that familiarity and like turning it on its ear. So you're still constantly shocked at what's going on. You're never lulled into predictability ever. And it's a wonderful series. It's great.
It's also really neat how like you get to know, the different dragonfly men. There's the harsh, cynical one, and then there's the optimistic one from the earlier period. And at first when you read the story, you assume that they're very, very different people, but they're not. In fact, they're more similar than you might think. And that was neat.
Exactly.
That was a really nice sort of
Yeah,
juxtaposition.
I agree. I cannot recommend those books enough.
So, so Dave, we're heading up against the end of the show, and this is where we do the gauntlet. Are you ready? The fun questions.
I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
Awesome. So, what's your favorite food?
Ooh, favorite food? Some form of chicken? No, no. You know what it is? It's salad. What am I thinking? I eat salad every single day. I get made fun of for how much I eat salad. It's salad.
Nice. Would you say you're a cat person or a dog person?
I've had both, but probably more of a cat person.
Nice. What's the best swear word?
Mm. Um, this is gonna sound so lame. Um, I really just like damn it, because I feel like it's such a great punchline to so many like moments where like silence and then just a damn it. It's so simple and yet somehow it makes a wonderful marked punchline at the end of a joke.
Good choice. So, what inspires you?
What inspires me? Oh gosh, silliness, wackiness. I like things that don't take themselves too seriously. I think that's why I love Silver Age comics so much. I will take a Silver Age comic anytime I can get my hands on it, especially if it's wacky and weird and something like Jimmy Olsen or Superman just being a jerk for some hidden reason. Uh, because I like things to just be silly. There's enough seriousness in the world that the older I get, the more I want things to be more on the silly side, a little wackiness.
Speaking of which, have you seen the new Jimmy Olsen comic?
I did. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I wish it would run for 100 issues.
Same here. It is so much fun.
It was great. I have, if I have the time, a moment, there was a time where I was a newspaper journalist, and I'm not going to lie, a lot of my background of newspapers came from reading and watching Superman and Jimmy Olsen books, and so in the early days of my newspaper career, I often just thinking that, like, well, this is appropriate office attire. I was often wearing button-down shirts and a sweater vest, and I was actually at a accident or a fire or something once. Many moons ago in those days, and I was asking questions with my notepad in hand to a firefighter, and he just at one point started chuckling, and he just said to me, I'm really sorry, you just remind me of Jimmy Olsen, I'm really sorry. And I was like, no problem at all, Chief, that I take that as a compliment.
Nice.
But I love it. I love Jimmy Olsen. I think there is so much that can be done with that character, and there's so much potential for fun. So I love the new series. I love the original Silver Age Jimmy Olsen. I hope they do more with it, because that was awesome. Although I did say that when I was a newspaper reporter, I never got to deal with a runaway robot, and I never got turned into a turtle boy, and that is one of my big regrets, I will say.
Yeah, I can see that. And you've got no magic attic full of, all kinds of weird mystical inventions.
No wacky scientists to go interview and have their inventions go awry every week.
Yeah, I could see that. Real life just is not as interesting as Silver Age comics, I think. So what brings you joy?
Honestly, it's my kids. They bring me a lot of frustration, admittedly, but they also bring me a lot of joy. They see the world in a way that either I've never thought of, or in a way that I find that I have forgotten. And they put me back in touch with that perspective. And that makes me very, very happy.
That's beautiful. Okay, so if you could change one detail on planet Earth, just one detail about living here, what would it be?
I wish I had some really smart, funny answer, but it's really witty. But I don't. I just I wish I could make people be kinder to each other. I think there's so much out for number one, and that trickles down to causing a lot of anti-kindness. So if I could do anything, it would be to find the kindness equation and use it on Earth.
I love it. So you wake
I'll
up.
be the anti-dark side.
I was just thinking that. It's like the
I'm gonna be light side.
the pro-life. No, don't call it pro-life. No, call it the kindness equation. There you go.
Don't call it that. Don't call it
that. All right. So you wake up one morning and you are imbued with superpowers. What are they, and what do you choose to do with them?
I love the idea of flight, but flight on its own, I feel, is a terrible idea, because all it takes is one person to hit you like a duck flying through the air, and you're down. I'm gonna say the Flash's power. I was always a big Flash fan, and I like the idea of super speed, being able to be there when time is of the essence, to be able to try and help out in moments that we may not otherwise have gotten a chance to. I like that. Super speed. We'll go with that.
So do you see yourself as in that capacity as more of a hero or a villain or an anti-hero or someone who isn't especially heroic in either direction?
Well, I think we all see ourselves as the hero of our story, even the not so nice people do. But I know what I want to be. Because we can all say, "Oh, I'm going to do this," but I think we can all say what we think we're going to be. But I know what I want to be, and I would want to be I'd want to be the good guy. I'd want to be the hero. There's a reason that I love that big blue Boy Scout version of Superman, because people make fun of him because he's cheesy, but to me, he just really sums up that whole, you've got all of these incredible powers, and what are you going to do with them? You're going to do the right thing. You're going to be good to people. You're going to be nice to people, and you're going to try and set an example for other people to do the right thing. And I don't care how cheesy that is. I think that brightness and that hope of that heroism, I love it. I absolutely love it. And I would if I ever had superpowers, do my best to try and live up to that ideal. I honestly think in so many times in life, I have asked myself, or in a moment of conflict, like, all right, what would Clark Kent do in this situation? And it's gotten me through all kinds of not great moments in life, because Clark would do the right thing.
100 years from now, NASA takes your entire creative output, just launches it into space. Sometime later, it's found and deciphered by aliens. What's their thought? What do they think of you and your work?
What was he thinking? Honestly, I hope that those advanced species that find it look at it and maybe laugh at the unbridled idealism and the hopeful eyes that it was created with.
So what's the secret sauce? How do you make your comics stand out from the crowd?
I think you just have to do what entertains you. I think that the minute you start trying to do something that you want to appeal to everyone, or you want to be, the next big thing, once the intentions are off kilter, I think that can make a concept off kilter. So I think if you're going in with the pure motivation of what's fun for you, what makes you happy, what entertains you, that's the secret sauce. It's just making something because you want to tell. You have a story that you want to tell, not because you want to sell something, not because you're looking for an end to something. You're doing it if the intention is to tell the story that you have in your head. That to me is the secret sauce.
I love that answer.
Thank you.
So what's next for Dave Dellecese?
Like I said, well, as I mentioned, we're working on there's a volume 2 of Lacey and Lily written. It's being illustrated as we speak. Andrew's doing a phenomenal job on that. Every time he sends more pages, I get more and more excited about it. And so we're halfway through with that and sending things along to Darby Pop as they develop. I have some other things in various stages. I won't go to details, but I hope there is at least a few more children's picture books on the horizon, and possibly some prose work to come. I just had a Christmas book come out in November, which was a historical fiction book. I think there may be some more prose pieces, both short and longer, in the future. To me, it's sort of, if there's a story to tell in some format, I hope that as long as my fingers and my brain keep working, that I'll find a way to tell them.
Well, Dave, you have been just such an absolutely insightful and an amazing guest. And I wanted to thank you for doing me the honor of popping into my humble little podcast.
The honor was truly all mine. This was a wonderful conversation, and you were an amazing host. So I thank you so much for giving me the honor to be here.
Awesome. Where can people find you online?
Well, they can find me on, I have a website, davedellecese.com. My name's spelled a little funny, I know. Or on Twitter at Dave Dellecese. Or I have a Facebook page set up for my writing as well. So it's facebook.com/Dave Dellecese. So any of those places, I'm usually found spouting comic nonsense, posting old comic panels, and pontificating about what I don't understand about the world.
And that's it, my babies. It's time to close the show. I wanted to thank you for being amazing, being awesome, being gorgeous, and living your best life. You're beautiful, and we couldn't do this humble little podcast without you. Hey, do you feel like supporting the show financially? It's super easy. Just go to buymeacoffee.com/EvaIsAdorable, because I am. You could donate as little as $1, and everything we raise goes towards the cost of producing and hosting this podcast. Every little bit helps. If you can't help us financially, it would be awesome if you could share this episode on Twitter or Instagram and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to follow me at EvaIsAdorable on Twitter for the latest and greatest updates, show announcements, and daily hugs and affection, because that's what I do. This show is part of Batch 34. Titular Characters is a show about the things we love. It's produced and hosted by the adorable Eva Webb. That's me. You might have noticed the dreamy announcer guy at the beginning of the show. That's our friend Donnie Underwood. Just love that guy. Our opening theme was written and produced by Antonia Marquis. Closing theme by Mikey Flash of Speed Force Music. And that's it. That's all we got. Join us next time for another death-defying adventure in cyberspace. Oh, and when you come by, bring candy. Love yas.